Previously, Isaac explained to his father what happened with the attack on Alondra and their suspicions that Sarah Brew was behind it. Townsfolk arrived for that night's meeting as scheduled, and Alondra put on a brave face and led it as planned. Several of the group noticed that Syl Brew showed up for a while, but he didn't say anything or speak to anyone while he was there. When Syl left, August turned invisible and slipped out to follow him without saying anything to any of the others. He managed to slip inside the mayor's house through an open window. While inside, he overheard an argument between Sarah and Syl that implied that Syl wasn't aware of anything that his wife had been doing. He seemed resigned to losing the election the next day, which Sarah was furious about as she claimed their lives would fall apart if he didn't win. Sarah stormed out of the room and August followed. Sort of. Out of character, his player asked the DM if his ability, wink wink nudge nudge, would affect invisibility. When told no, he stated that he changed from August to Beck, confusing at least some of his fellow players. Beck followed Sarah into another room, where she had a minor breakdown before moving a rug and going through a trap door hidden in the floor. He didn't follow, instead picking the lock of the door and then locking it back afterwards so that he could leave the room without there being any sign he was there. He made his way back to Isaac's house, changing back into August along the way. In the aftermath of the meeting, August filled the group in on what he discovered, with no mention of anyone named Beck, of course. Several of them brought up the fact that this was the second time in the last few weeks that they'd seen people disappear through trapdoors in the floor, at which point Isaac explained that the town was built on top of a natural cave system. People used the caves for cellars and such, closing them off with man-made walls. When asked if there were any houses near the mayor's house with access to those caves so that they could attempt to sneak in, Isaac said no. But there was a mill that was usually empty at night. The group decided that August, Isaac, and Eversong would go speak to the Brews to tell them about the attack on Alondra. They planned to watch their faces and body language closely to try and determine who was actually in on it. Kestir and Zarakir would stay behind to keep an eye on Alondra in case there were any other attempted attacks. Meanwhile, Adria would turn into a badger and try to dig her way into the caves under the mayor's house. Badger Adria was able to get into the caves fairly easily. She found a few books, including Sarah's journal, as well as a statue of a man with wings surrounded by floating candles and candle stubs. There was a picture of the Brews children at the base of the statue, all of them with eyes that were portrayed as completely black, as well as what looked like offerings of food and coin. Meanwhile, at the Brews' house, Isaac explained what happened to his mother with some help from August and Eversong. Syl didn't seem to know anything about the attack, but they all saw recognition on Sarah's face. She did, however, seem concerned about Alandra's condition. They suggested that Syl might be in danger, since they don't know who was behind the attack, so perhaps one or more of them could stay behind to help guard him as well. As that conversation was happening, Sarah slipped back down to her underground lair, where Badger Adria overheard her speaking to someone. She only heard Sarah's side of the conversation, but she seemed upset that Alondra had been hurt and was insisting that even if Syl lost the election, there were other options, other towns. Even hearing just Sarah's side of the conversation, Badger Adria didn't get the impression the other individual involved was buying it. It also sounded like the Brews children were definitely involved in what was going on, in some way or another. Badger Adria left as Sarah began sobbing, and she heard the sound of something crashing and breaking against a wall, followed by a visceral scream as she made her way back out. And that is where we left off.